Welcome to No Nonsense Psychiatry, the podcast that cuts through the noise and the confusion surrounding mental health. My name is Mark and I'm your host, and my goal is to give you the clear, practical information you need to understand your own well-being. No jargon, no fluff, just honest, helpful tools to help you on your journey. Let's dive in.
No nonsense.
Today we're taking a deep dive into one of the most persistent and devastating challenges in human health, and this is addiction. My name's Mark and this is episode 74 of No Nonsense Psychiatry. We're not talking about weakness or poor choices, we're breaking down the science of why this condition is recognised as a chronic brain disease, that activity hijacks our motivation and decision-making centres. First, we'll explore the harsh reality of addiction cycle and its destructive neurological roots using our brain hacked model to show exactly how substances like methamphetamine or ice damage the reward, stress and control centers of the brain. We will also outline 3 classic hallmarks of addiction: loss of control, harmful consequences, and the cycle of tolerance and withdrawal. Then, to bring the science to life, we share a powerful composite story of Michael. Michael lost everything: his job, his home, his family, and his self-respect to the spiral of addiction. But his story doesn't end in the dark. It moves into a hard-won fight for recovery, demonstrating the dignity, commitment, and practical steps needed to rebuild a life from the ground up. And finally, we'll pivot on actionable recovery options, covering everything from clinical medication-assisted treatment, or MAT, to resistance detox community support options like SMART recovery and the 12-step programs. And we'll conclude with 3 specific non-negotiable strategies to help anyone move from contemplation of quitting to taking their first confident step towards sobriety. So let's get started with the story of Michael losing everything to the fight for his recovery. The story highlights the spiral of loss common in addiction and the hard-won dignity and sobriety. The slide downhill. My name is Michael. I wasn't rich or famous. I was just a dad with a steady job as a carpenter, a small house in the suburbs, and a family that loved me. My addiction started subtly, a way to manage the long hours and the background noise of anxiety. When I found meth, it promised focus and energy, but it delivered obsession and paranoia. The drug became my entire world, and I quickly became a stranger to everything else and everyone else. The addiction demanded money, and I started missing shifts, then stealing from my employer's supplies, and I was fired. Losing my income was like the first domino, leading to desperate measures. The lies and the chaos eventually pushed my wife to leave. I understood why. She had to protect our 2 kids from this person I had become, a wired, erratic ghost who only cared about his next fix. I lost my house, bounced between cheap motels, and finally ended up sleeping on park benches. I cut off every single person who cared for me because their love was a painful reminder of who I'd been. I was utterly alone and consumed in the cycle of scoring, using and crashing. My identity was reduced to an addict, and the thought of recovery was terrifying because I had nothing left to go back to. The moment of change wasn't dramatic, it was quiet. One cold night, huddled under a thin blanket, I couldn't do it anymore. I was tired of being cold, I was tired of lying, and I was tired of being Michael the addict. I made the hardest call of my life to my sister, admitting I can't stop and I need help. This surrender was the first step. I went to a community detox program and then a halfway house. Recovery wasn't about fixes, it was about a slow, agonising work of rebuilding a foundation from scratch, and I focused on the basics: sleeping, eating, going to meetings and finding a sponsor. I couldn't get my old jet back, but I started working small, honest jobs and saving every cent. I learned to face my shame without reaching for a drug, and my relationships couldn't be instantly fixed, but they had earned me back over time through consistent, trustworthy behaviour. I apologise, not expecting forgiveness, but offering accountability. Today, I live in a small apartment. I work full-time. I attend to recovery meetings regularly. I don't see my kids every day, but I have supervised visits, and they know the dad who shows up now is present, sober and safe. I'm still a work in progress, but the best thing I have today is my integrity and a quiet, profound gratitude for the ordinary life that I got back to. Michael's story, like many others, shows that powerful recovery is often in the daily grind of staying sober and rebuilding a life of dignity, piece by piece. When we talk about addiction, we're not talking about a lack of discipline or a bad choice. Doctors and scientists recognise it's a chronic illness of the brain, like diabetes or asthma, that makes it nearly impossible to stop using the substance, even when a person desperately wants to. Think of the brain like a complex computer that an addiction hacks. Drugs like ice, methamphetamine can leave lasting changes in three key areas. First of all, the reward centre of the brain. And this is the pleasure and motivation part. It lights up when we eat good food, laugh or hug someone. What addiction does is that drugs flood into this area with a massive amount of dopamine, the feel-good chemical, and this makes the drug feel like the only thing that matters, overwhelming normal activities. It affects the stress centre of the brain, and this part creates feelings of anxiety, stress and fear, and when the drug leaves the body, the crash, this area goes into overdrive. The person feels intensely depressed and miserable, so they take the drug again just to feel normal and escape the pain. It also affects the decision-making part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, and it's this part of the brain that thinks ahead, controls impulses and makes good decisions. Addiction weakens this part, and the person knows the drug is hurting them, but the overwhelming compulsion to use overrides that logic and willpower. 3 signs of addiction. Once addiction develops, it's defined by these behaviours which demonstrate the loss of control. The person starts using more of the substance or using it for a longer time than intended. They generally try to quit, but they can't follow through. The harmful consequences, they keep using the drug even when they know it's causing them serious damage to their health, their job, their finances and their relationships. Tolerance means that they need a higher and higher dose to get the same effect. Withdrawal means that the physical and mental sickness, anxious and depressed if they stop. So think of an addiction like a faulty survival switch. The brain mistakenly believes that drugs are necessary for life, as water or oxygen, making seeking the drug top priority above family, health and safety. It's a serious illness, but it's treatable and people can recover. Common addictions, substances and behaviour. Substance addictions, chemical dependence. These involve chemical dependence on mood-altering substances. Alcohol, the most widely used addictive substance globally. Alcohol use disorder, AUD, affects millions and contributes significantly to the health burdens nationwide. Nicotine, tobacco, highly prevalent primarily through smoking cigarettes, which remains the leading preventable cause of death globally. Cannabis, marijuana, the most commonly used illicit drug worldwide, which increases the rates of cannabis use disorder, CUD, as potency rises and legislation expands. Opioids, prescription pain-killing heroin and fentanyl, a massive public health crisis in many countries, categorised by a rapid onset of physical dependence and high rates of overdose. Cocaine, a powerful stimulant that leads to intense psychological dependence. Amphetamines including ice, highly addictive central nervous system stimulants known for causing rapid severe deterioration in physical and mental health. Behavioural addictions. These involve compulsions to engage in non-reward, non-substance behaviour, negative consequences. These involve compulsion to engage in rewarding non-substance behaviour despite negative consequences. So these addictions include problem gambling, defined by persistent and recurrent problematic gambling behaviour leading to distress and impairment. This is the most clinical recognised behaviour addiction. internet gaming addiction, gaming disorder, compulsion and uncontrollable use of the internet or video games leading to severe impairment in daily functioning. The WHO, World Health Organization, now recognizes gaming disorder as a medical condition. Food and eating addiction, compulsion over consumption of food, often focuses on hyper-palatable foods like high in sugar, fat and salt, driven by neurobiological mechanisms similar to drug dependence. Sex pornography addiction, compulsive sexual behaviour, a persistent pattern of compulsion sexual thoughts and behaviours cause significant distress and impairment in personal relationships and daily life. The 3 stages of an addiction cycle: the binge, intoxication, the use phase. This stage is driven by the brain's reward system, the basal ganglia. Action, the person takes a substance like ice. The brain chemistry, the drug causes a massive unnatural release of dopamine, creating an intense feeling of pleasure, euphoria, energy, rush, high, whatever you want to call it. And the result is this powerful feeling teaches the brain that this drug is the most important thing for survival, reinforcing the desire to repeat the behaviour with repeated use. With repeated use, tolerance develops, meaning the user needs more of the drug to achieve the same effect, leading to binges. Withdrawal, the negative effect, the crash phase, and this stage is driven by the brain's stress system, the extended amygdala. So the effects of the drug wearing off, the person begins to crash, the brain chemicals are depleted, leading to physical and psychological discomfort. The stress system goes into overdrive, and the result, the person experiences intensive and negative emotions like severe depression, anxiety, irritability, and physical sickness. Withdrawal. They are using, not for pleasure anymore, but just to escape this miserable state in which they are known as negative reinforcement. And then we have the preoccupation or the anticipation, the craving phase. And this stage is driven by the brain's smart decision-making system, Prefrontal Cortex. The person is sober but intensely focused on obtaining and using the substance again. The brain chemistry, this weakening prefrontal cortex, struggles to control the intense signals coming from the reward and stress systems, and the cravings are overwhelming. And the result is that the person sacrifices logic, responsibility, and personal values just to plan and execute the next use. And this leads them right back into the binge, intoxication stage, completing the cycle and cementing the addiction. The danger of this cycle is that each time it repeats, the neurological and behavioural pathways become stronger and more deeply entrenched, and the brain's natural ability to feel pressure and regulate mood weakens, making it harder and harder to break the loop without external help. For someone struggling with addiction, there are many avenues for help, and the best plan usually involves a combination of different approaches tailored with the individual needs, the severity of the addiction, and any co-occurring mental health issues. Professional treatment. These options provide structure, supervised care, often involving medical professionals and licensed therapists. The detoxification period, detox, what is it? It's the first step for many, involving medically supervised withdrawal from the substance. The purpose is to manage the acute withdrawal symptoms safely and comfortably, especially for substances like alcohol and opioids, where withdrawal can be medically dangerous, and it clears the body of the substance and prepares the mind for further treatment. Inpatient rehabilitation residential rehab, what is it? It's living at a facility for a period of typically 30, 60, 90 days to receive intense therapy and medical care away from the stresses and triggers of home life. It's a highly structured environment offering individual and group therapy, education, wellness activities, and development of coping skills. Then there are outpatients programs, so attending therapy sessions and groups at a facility for several hours a day, several days a week, while living at a home in a sober living facility. It includes intensive outpatients programs, which are highly structured, and standard outpatient care, which is less time intensive, allowing the person to maintain work and school. Medical assistance. What is it? The use of medications combined with counselling and behaviour therapists to treat substances. Example, medications like naltrexone or buprenorphine, Suboxone are highly effective and treating opiate and alcohol use disorders by reducing cravings and preventing relapse. Support groups and community resources. These options focus on long-term fellowship and accountability. They are usually free and readily available. The 12-step program examples, Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. They focus on a spiritual, non-religious approach that emphasises community, self-examination, making amends and helping others. And this provides a network of lifelong sobriety. Non-12-step programs, Smart Recovery, self-management and recovery training, they are circular, science-based alternatives to focus on empowerment, cognitive behaviour, CBT and motivation. Family and peer support groups for families, members and of people with addictions, and they offer peer recovery coaches who are trained individuals to recovery themselves and who guide newcomers basically. So they're good for family and the person as well. Therapy and counselling. Therapy helps the person understand the root causes of their addiction and develop a healthy mechanism for change. You can have individual therapy working one-to-one with a licensed counsellor or psychologist. Cognitive behavioural therapy, CBT, helps the client recognise and avoid and cope with situations of thought that trigger the drug use to start with. And dialectical behaviour focuses on managing painful emotions and reducing conflict in relationships. There's family therapy, and that involves family members to improve communications and address relationship dynamics that may be contributed or complicated by the addiction. And the most effective approach is always to blend of clinical treatment, like therapy with MAT, like community support, like AA and SMART. Recovery is a journey and not just a single event, and it requires a continuous effort and adjustment. Contemplating giving up an addiction is the start of the determination stage of change, and here are 3 strategies focused on turning that contemplation into concrete action and maintaining motivation. Do a cost-benefit analysis. This strategy helps you solidify your motivation by clearly laying out the real value of change. Smart Recovery often uses this tool. Action. Take out a piece of paper and draw 4 columns. What you currently get out of the addiction, e.g. temporary stress relief, feeling of escape. That's the pros of using, The cons of using. What the addiction costs you, i.e. health, money, trust, future. The pros of quitting. What are the expected benefits of sobriety, i.e. getting your kids back or having steady finances, better sleep. And the cons of quitting. What are the perceived sacrifices of quitting, i.e. the social anxiety, boredom, the losing addictive friends. The purpose is by visually comparing the huge cost of continuous versus massive benefits of stopping, you strengthen your rationale to resolve and weaken the emotional pull of the addiction. Focus on the results in columns 2 and 3. Next step is to build a support list. Addiction thrives on isolation and secrecy. Combat this with proactively creating a safety net and clear action plan for when cravings strike. Create a list of 5 to say supportive people you can call or text immediately. This should include people who know about your struggle and will offer support without judgment, i.e. a family member, a non-using friend, a potential sponsor, or a helpline number. The purpose is that this list will give you an immediate non-using response to a crisis. When a craving hits, you might clear it. Your mind isn't clear enough to think rationally. A bit like what we were talking about, thinking over the feelings rather than the facts. But your mind is not thinking rationally, and having a list readily bypasses the urge and immediately connects you with your support network. Or you could pre-plan your first 72 hours. The detox action window. The first few days are the most physically and psychologically difficult period. Having a clear schedule plan reduces the opportunity for relapse. Decide when and how you will detox and get help. If you need a medical detox, arrange the date. If you plan a detox at home, only advisable and for non-medically dangerous withdrawals like meth or not alcohol or benzos. Plan every hour. Eliminate triggers. Clean your house and of all paraphernalia and block access to dealers and contacts. Schedule meetings. Locate and commit to attending at least 2 support group meetings, AA, NA, Smart Recovery during the first 3 days. Stay busy. Plan simple, distracting, healthy activities. Long walks, watching a favourite movie, meal prepping. The purpose of the strategy really reduces the need for willpower by automating your actions. Structure is the enemy of addiction. So if having a plan makes you start your recovery feel more concrete and manageable. So there you go, that wraps up this episode of No Nonsense Psychiatry. And we've dissected the science behind addiction, recognising it's not a moral failure, but a chronic disease of the brain, a condition that fundamentally rewires the neurocircuits governing reward, stress and control. Through the powerful story of Michael, we saw the devastating human cost of this disease, but more importantly, the incredible dignity and strength required to fight back and rebuild a life of recovery. Remember, the goal is not perfection but progress. And if you are someone who you know, or if you or someone you know is struggling, the most important takeaway is this: help is available. Whether it's through evidence-based tools, smart recovery, community, or 12-step program, or a safe clinical environment, or detox and medical emergency treatment, there's always a path forward. Don't wait for your rock bottom. If you've contemplated quitting, use that determination today. Take out a piece of paper, do the cost-benefit analysis, and make your commitment to your first 72 hours. For links and resources we discussed, including national helplines and guides to finding local meeting, please check your local internet for what region you might be in, and make a note of those numbers and keep them somewhere steady and handy. Or if you can't do that yourself, ask a close friend that might support you and do that and prepare the list for you. Thank you for tuning in. Until then, be well and take care of your mind. Before we go, if you found the podcast helpful, please share it with someone who might benefit from it. You can also support the show by subscribing and leaving a review. It only takes a moment, but it makes a big difference in helping us reach more people. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode of No Nonsense Psychiatry.
No nonsense.